Here's your story. She was mocked for owning an alien's house, then the remodel uncovered something incredible. When Janelle first inherited the house, her friends called it a space barn. The aliens who had lived in it before her, long gone after the evacuation treaty, had built in their own style, walls that shimmered like oil on water, doorways taller than any human could reach, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of citrus and ozone. The neighbors snickered behind her back. Why not just sell it to a scrap crew? They'd say. It's not like alien architecture is useful to humans. Even her brother suggested tearing it down and building something normal. But Janelle was stubborn. She had always been fascinated by the alien species called the Drenari, whose houses were more like living organisms than static buildings. She decided to remodel it, not to erase the alien influence, but to make it livable for a human. She hired a mixed team of human and Drenari-trained contractors, who worked carefully, removing panels, peeling back layered materials like the skin of an onion. That's when they found it. Behind a translucent wall in the basement was a sealed chamber, one no blueprint had ever shown. The door opened with a hiss, releasing a rush of warm, sweet air. Inside was a garden. Not just any garden, a perfect, self-sustaining microclimate. Vines spiraled up glowing crystal rods, flowers pulsed faintly with bioluminescence, and a small pool rippled under its own artificial gravity bubble. Floating above the water was a device, humming softly, a Drenari memory seed. When she touched it, it bloomed like a flower, projecting visions into the air. She saw the house as it had been decades ago, filled with the alien family that once lived there, the parents teaching their child to swim in the gravity pool, tending to the plants that responded to their voices, singing strange lullabies under violet light. The contractors stopped working. The news spread. Suddenly, the space barn wasn't a joke anymore, it was a priceless relic of a vanished civilization. Researchers offered her fortunes to let them study it. The Planetary Council declared it a protected heritage site, and Janelle, she didn't sell. Instead, she opened the garden to visitors, letting humans and the few remaining Drenari refugees walk among its alien blossoms. Because it wasn't just a house anymore. It was a bridge between species, between past and present, and it had been waiting, silently, for someone stubborn enough to care. If you want, I can also make a longer, more cinematic version of this with dialogue and deeper alien lore so it feels like a full HFY short story. Got it, here's the continuation in a longer, cinematic style with dialogue, deeper alien lore, and a growing sense of mystery. She was mocked for owning an alien's house, then the remodel uncovered something incredible. Part 2. The garden discovery spread across the city like wildfire. News drones hovered outside her property line, trying to get a glimpse of the glowing vines through the translucent fence. But Janelle didn't let them in. Not yet. She sat in the center of the garden, the memory seed hovering above her palm, its soft light spilling over her face. "Who were you?" she murmured to the empty air. The seed responded, not with words, but with flashes of the Drenari family's life. The father, tall and crystalline-eyed, carving symbols into a living wall. The mother, her voice like wind through reeds, coaxing vines into curling shapes. The child, staring at something unseen, as if aware of Janelle watching across time. A voice broke her trance. "You're not supposed to be here." Janelle turned. A man in a dark coat stood at the garden's edge, a symbol of the Interstellar Preservation Authority on his sleeve. He wasn't smiling. "That chamber is restricted cultural property. It should have been reported immediately." "It's my house," Janelle said evenly. "Not anymore. The moment you found this, it became an artifact." She crossed her arms. "Then maybe you should have been here before the neighborhood kids broke windows for fun. I kept it safe. You didn't." Something flickered in his expression, not annoyance, but hesitation. "Do you know what that is in your hand?" "A Drenari memory seed." "No," he said quietly, "not just a seed. That's an anchor. If you keep it, the house might call them back." Janelle blinked. "Call who back?" "The Drenari are gone." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Not all of them. Some never left. Some hid." He glanced at the vines, which were swaying, though no wind stirred the air. "If they know this garden still lives, they'll come for it, and they won't trust you." The vines shifted again, slowly, deliberately, like they were listening. That night, Janelle locked the garden and hid the seed, but she couldn't sleep. The images it had shown her replayed over and over, until she noticed something new. In the vision of the child swimming, there was a faint reflection in the water. A human face, watching. If you like, I can take part 3 into a full HFY reveal, where the Drenari return and the incredible thing becomes more than just a relic. It's a galactic-level secret humans were never meant to find. Alright, here's part 3 where the mystery deepens. The Drenari return, and the incredible secret begins to unfold. Part 3, The Garden's Call. Janelle didn't open the garden for weeks. She told the Preservation Authority she needed time to secure the property and stabilize the growth systems. In truth, she was afraid, not of the Drenari. She'd read enough to know they weren't conquerors, but of what the memory seed might do if she kept using it. Still, the pull was too strong. Late one night, she crept down into the chamber, stepping over the faintly glowing moss. The vines seemed to shift as she passed, their tendrils curling toward her fingertips like curious pets. She sat by the gravity pool and held the seed. "Show me again," she whispered. Light poured from it. The Drenari family appeared, sharper now, almost real. The child was older this time, standing at the edge of the pool, staring directly at her. "Why are you here?" the child asked. Janelle's heart slammed against her ribs. The memory spoke back. This is my house," she stammered. "This is our house," the child said. The vines all around them shivered. "The garden still listens to us." Janelle took a step back. "You're alive?" "Yes." The voice came again, but it was no longer from the vision. It was behind her. She spun. A figure stood in the corner, tall, draped in a cloak woven with leaf-like fibers. Their skin shimmered faintly, patterns shifting like sunlight through water. "I told you they'd come," a voice said from the shadows behind him. It was the Preservation Authority agent. He stepped into the light, gaze fixed on the newcomer. "This is why the treaty forbids human possession of unpurged alien structures." The Drenari stepped closer to Janelle. "You have tended the garden. You can keep it. But now, you must decide." His eyes glowed faintly, like deep ocean bioluminescence, "whether it grows for humans, or for us." The vines around her tightened, forming shapes, bridges, doorways, patterns she recognized from the visions. The garden wasn't just alive. It was a machine. And if what she suspected was true, it wasn't designed to grow food or beauty. It was designed to grow worlds. "If you want, I can make part for the full HFY payoff, where humans discover they can do something with the garden the Drenari never could, and the balance of power shifts. That's where things get very humanity. Yeah. Alright, here's part 4, where we hit the HFY payoff and reveal what makes the garden's secret truly incredible. Part 4, The Human Touch. The Drenari's words echoed in the chamber. "Whether it grows for humans, or for us." Janelle glanced between the alien and the Preservation Authority agent, feeling the gravity of the choice press in. "You're talking like it's one or the other," she said. "Why can't it be both?" The Drenari tilted his head, as if the idea was strange. "Because the garden bonds to its caretaker. It will mirror their nature, their instincts. We learned long ago that if two species tried to claim it, it would wither." The agent gave a grim nod. "It's true. That's why the Drenari gardens are gone. Their empire fell when they couldn't make them flourish anymore." Janelle stared at the vines, their faint glow pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "But it has been growing," she said slowly. "For me, and I'm not Drenari." The alien's expression shifted, something between curiosity and disbelief. "Impossible. No human should be able to interface with its root mind. Your biology is." One of the vines slithered toward her, coiling gently around her wrist. The alien stopped speaking. The vine pulsed once, and the entire garden shifted. The bioluminescent flowers brightened, the gravity pool expanded, and the air itself changed, warmer, richer, filled with a sweet oxygen tang. Then the floor rumbled. From beneath the moss, a crystal pillar began to rise, petals of alien alloy unfolding to reveal a seed the size of a human head. Inside it swirled miniature storms and oceans, a whole world in embryo. The Drenari's voice was barely a whisper. "It's a world core. You've awakened it." The Preservation Authority agent's eyes widened. "That's not just a garden. It's a terraformer. That seed can remake a planet's surface in weeks. Janelle felt the vine tighten on her wrist, not painfully, but with intent. She understood without words. The garden didn't just respond to her, it trusted her. The Drenari looked almost reverent now. We could never make them work again after the Great Collapse. But you've done in moments what my people failed to do in centuries. Janelle smiled faintly. Maybe it's because humans aren't trying to make it obey. We just take care of things. The Drenari's gaze locked on hers. Then you are no longer a caretaker of a house. You are the gardener of worlds. Outside, the news drones still hovered, clueless about what had just happened underground. And Janelle, mocked for inheriting an alien space barn, was now holding the power to reshape planets in her hands. And she wasn't planning to give it to anyone. If you want, I can give you part 5 where humanity finds out. Alien powers start scheming, and Janelle has to decide if she's going to keep the garden hidden, or use it to put humans on the galactic map forever. That's where the real conflict starts. Alright, here's part 5, where the secret leaks, alien powers start circling, and Janelle is forced into a very human kind of decision. Part 5, The Gardener of Worlds. For 3 days, Janelle tried to keep the discovery quiet. She told the Preservation Authority agent to file his report as pending verification and convinced the Drenari visitor to stay inside, away from news drones. But secrets that big don't stay buried. It began with a leak, some grainy footage from a contractor's helmet cam showing the vines moving like snakes and the crystal pillar rising from the moss. Within hours, every major comm stream was broadcasting it. The speculation was immediate and wild. Alien superweapon found in human-owned home? Terraform tech could end famine forever, or destroy planets. Should humanity be allowed to keep it? By the second day, she had ships in orbit. Some were human, bristling with military escort craft. Others were alien, their hulls patterned in unfamiliar colors, their intentions unknown. The Drenari stood in her kitchen, watching the feeds. They will try to take it from you, he said simply. I noticed, she muttered, peering through the blinds at the distant shimmer of atmospheric landers. Humans will want it for conquest. My people will want it to restore what we lost. And there are others, species you've never met, who will burn this planet to keep it from existing at all. Janelle looked at him, and for the first time, she saw fear in those shifting eyes. That night, she went back to the garden. The vine slid up her arm again, pulsing gently. She didn't speak out loud. But she thought, can you hide? The gravity pool rippled, the glow dimmed, the pillar sank back beneath the moss as if it had never been there. The garden went still. By morning, the chamber looked like a hollow basement again. When the first military inspection team arrived, they found nothing, no bioluminescence, no alien core, just a bare, dusty room. They left frustrated, muttering about hoaxes and misinformation. The Drenari approached her later, whispering, you have bonded to it completely. That is rare, even among my kind. Now you must decide, will you use it for a single world, or all of them? Janelle's gaze drifted toward the stars beyond her window. Maybe, she said, I'll let the galaxy keep laughing at humans a little longer. Gives me time to plant something worth growing. The Drenari's smile was slow, knowing, the galaxy does not yet understand the most dangerous thing about your species. What's that? He leaned in, voice like a rustle of leaves. You don't just survive, you make things thrive. If you want, I can make part 6 the moment where Janelle finally decides to use the garden, and the first planet she chooses changes humanity's place in the galaxy forever. That's where the HFY punch lands the hardest. Alright, here's part 6, where Janelle finally decides to use the garden, and humanity takes its first bold step onto the galactic stage. Part 6, First Planting. 3 months passed. The ships in orbit left one by one, their crews grumbling at the lack of proof. The galaxy's attention shifted to fresher scandals and wars, but Janelle didn't forget. She had been meeting in secret, with scientists she trusted, with human diplomats who could keep their mouths shut, and with the Drenari, whose people had been living scattered and silent for a century. When the time came, she didn't choose Earth. She chose a barren rock in the Beta Charybdis system, a world with no strategic value, no breathable atmosphere, no reason for anyone to care. That was the point. The Drenari stood beside her on the viewing platform of the small survey ship as they descended. "This is where you begin?" he asked, puzzled. Janelle smiled faintly. "Big changes start small. I'm not giving this tech to politicians and warlords. I'm giving it to life." The garden seed core sat in a containment cradle, humming softly. When she touched it, the vine mark on her wrist flared green. "Ready?" she asked it quietly. The seed split open, releasing a slow spiral of light that touched the cracked soil. Vines erupted in seconds, weaving across the ground, sprouting shimmering leaves that turned barren wind into sweet oxygen. The air grew warm. Clouds formed where there had been none. In minutes, the planet's horizon shifted from gray to green. The Drenari's voice was hushed. "It responds to you faster than it ever did for us. It is joyful." Janelle kept her eyes on the horizon. "That's because I'm not using it to rebuild an empire. I'm just letting it do what it wants." From orbit, the transformation was breathtaking, a dead world blooming in real time. But Janelle's comlink was already pinging with encrypted calls, the first human military channels, the first alien ambassadors. The galaxy had noticed. The Drenari turned to her. "You know this will change everything." "Good," Janelle said, smiling at the growing green below, "because the galaxy's about to learn what happens when humans start gardening. If you want, I can make Part 7 the point where rival alien powers start scheming to control her." But Janelle and a small coalition of humans and exiled aliens turn the garden into a movement that changes the political map. That's where the HFY theme can go epic. Alright, here's Part 7, where the galaxy reacts, rival powers start scheming, and Janelle turns the garden into something much bigger than herself. Part 7, Seeds of a Revolution. The blooming of Beta Charybdis 3 couldn't be hidden. By the time the second sunrise passed, deep space telescopes across a dozen star systems had caught the transformation, a barren rock turning green in hours. The footage went viral across every network, human and alien alike. The reactions were immediate. Unauthorized planetary modification in a contested system. Targeth Syndicate. The human known as Janelle Durand is in possession of Drenari classified technology. Council of 8. We recommend immediate seizure and containment. Varelian Defense Fleet. The Human United Systems Assembly issued a statement that was half pride, half panic. The media called her the Gardener of Worlds. The Drenari diaspora began whispering her name as if she were a prophet. And the warlords started moving ships. By the third day, Janelle's small survey vessel had a dozen military pings tracking it. The Beta Charybdis system was suddenly strategically important to half the galaxy. The Drenari advisor, Lurith, watched the tactical screens with a grim face. "They'll come for you, Janelle. Not just for the garden, for the bond. Without you, it's just soil and roots. That's why I'm not keeping it for myself," she said. He stared at her. "You'd give it away? After what it can do?" "Not give," she corrected. "Plant. Everywhere. On worlds no one cares about. In places where war and greed haven't hollowed the ground yet. We spread it faster than they can seize it." She tapped a control on her wrist. A holomap appeared, dotted with dozens of red pins, dead or dying planets scattered across known space. Luritha's eyes widened. "You've already chosen them?" "Been working on it since the day the core woke up," she said. "I've got human allies, some Drenari engineers, even a few defectors from the Preservation Authority, and," she smirked, "one very stubborn gardener." By the end of that week, her coalition had split into stealth teams, each carrying a smaller, bonded seed core. The garden had taught her how to make them, not weapons, but life bombs. The first new worlds began to bloom before the fleets could even mobilize. One in Varelian space, two in the abandoned fringe sectors, another on a war-torn colony where starving children walked under alien sunlight for the first time. And with every new planting, the galaxy's political map shifted, not toward war, but toward something far more dangerous to empires. Hope. If you want, I can make Part 8 the point where an alien superpower tries to stop her movement with overwhelming force, and humanity answers in a way the galaxy never saw coming, turning her garden into the spark of a new galactic order. Alright, here's Part 8, where one alien superpower finally moves against Janelle, and humanity answers in a way that changes the game. Part 8, The Empire's Shadow. It was the Varelian Dominion that made the first real strike. A week after Beta Charybdis bloomed, a fleet of 40 warships folded into orbit over the newborn green world. Their demand was blunt: surrender the Gardener and all seed cores, or they would sterilize the planet. Janelle watched the transmission in silence. The Varelians were reptilian, with silver-scaled faces and voices like grinding metal. To them, a planet was just territory. Life had no value except as a resource to be exploited. "They'll do it," Lurith said grimly. "They've glassed worlds before." The human fleet in the system was laughably small, 4 defense frigates and a refitted cargo hauler. Against the Dominion's firepower, it wouldn't last 10 minutes. Janelle stood in the command deck of her survey ship, staring at the tactical display. The Garden's bond pulsed faintly at her wrist, almost restless. Then she smiled. "We're not going to fight them." Lurith frowned. "Then they'll burn the planet." "No," she said, "they won't, because we're going to make it impossible." She keyed her comm and opened a live broadcast, not just to the Varelians, but to every open channel in the sector. "This is Janelle Durand. You want the Garden? You're too late. Beta Charybdis is already seeded, and so are 50 other worlds." The screen behind her lit up with a galactic map. Red dots bloomed into green one by one. "You can destroy this planet, but you can't stop life from spreading," she said. "Every world we plant is bonded to a human caretaker. Every caretaker is ready to fight, not with weapons, but with roots and rain. You can't bomb hope out of the soil." The Varelian commander's reply was a hiss of rage. "We will erase every seed." Janelle just leaned forward. "Good luck finding them all before they grow too big to kill." And then she cut the transmission. Hours passed. The Dominion fleet stayed in orbit, but they didn't fire. Not because of the defense frigates, but because in those hours, messages began flooding the Varelian networks. Videos from their own people on fringe worlds, showing green shoots pushing up through cracked ground, children laughing in air that had been poisoned the week before. Attacking now would mean destroying their own citizens' new hope. The political cost was too high. The Dominion withdrew. And just like that, the legend of the Gardener of Worlds became something more than rumor. It became a movement no empire could crush. If you want, I can make Part 9 the moment where the Garden reveals its final secret, something even the Drenari didn't know, giving humanity an advantage that could change the balance of power forever. Alright, here's Part 9, where the Garden reveals its final, most dangerous secret. Part 9, The Hidden Bloom. Weeks after the Varelian standoff, Janelle finally had a moment of peace. The Coalition's gardeners were spread across the galaxy now, tending their worlds. The core on Beta Charybdis pulsed gently in her private chamber. Content. She'd thought she understood it, thought she knew its limits. She was wrong. It started when one of the smaller seed cores went missing. A courier team on the edge of Drenari space simply vanished. Days later, the seed reappeared on Janelle's deck. No comm traffic, no trace of how it had traveled light years in hours. When she touched it, the vision hit her, harder than any before. The Garden wasn't just connected to her. It was connected to all the Gardens, every core, every caretaker, every green tendril on every planet. She was seeing through a web of living worlds. On one, a young human boy was teaching a Drenari child how to weave vines into shelters. On another, a wounded soldier was breathing clean air for the first time in months. She could feel their joy, their fear, their determination. And beneath it all, a hum. A steady, rising frequency, almost like the Garden itself was waking up. Lurith came into the chamber, his eyes wide. "Janelle, those visions, they're not memories." She looked at him, her skin prickling. "Then what are they?" "Coordinates." The realization hit like a shock. The Garden wasn't just a terraforming tool. It was a network, and it was pointing her toward something far beyond any planted world. Lurith's voice dropped to a whisper. "If I'm right, these coordinates lead to the first Garden, the one from which all Drenari life was seeded." Her wrist mark flared, brighter than ever before, and in her mind's eye she saw it, an entire planet, green from pole to pole, floating in a cradle of light, not a myth, not extinct, waiting. And then another voice came through the connection, not Drenari, not human, but something older. "You have woken the roots. Now, Gardener, will you wake the tree?" Janelle's breath caught. Because she knew, once she found that first garden, the balance of power in the galaxy wouldn't just shift. It would break. If you want, I can make part 10 the finale, where Janelle goes after the first garden, finds out what it really is, and faces a choice that could make humanity either the galaxy's savior or its new master. Alright, here's part 10, the finale, where Janelle reaches the first garden and faces the choice that will decide the galaxy's future. Part 10, the root of everything. The coordinates led to a dead zone, an uncharted sector swallowed by interstellar dust clouds. No navigational buoys, no traffic, no reason for anyone to go there. Except the garden wanted her to. Her small coalition ship slipped between drifting asteroids and phantom sensor echoes until the dust parted, and she saw it. The planet floated in silence, wrapped in a shimmering lattice of light. From space, it looked like a living jewel, forests glowing in shades no human eye had seen, oceans pulsing with bioluminescent tides. The first garden. The moment she entered orbit, the vine mark on her wrist burned with green fire. The core she carried pulsed in time, as if calling to something below. They landed in a clearing the size of a city, the air thick with scents both alien and achingly familiar, fresh soil after rain, the sweetness of wildflowers, a salt tang from a distant shore. The ground itself seemed to breathe. Lurith walked beside her, awe in his voice. This is older than my people's history, older than our star maps. Janelle, this is where the Drenari came from. No, she said softly, touching a vine as thick as a skyscraper. This is where life came from. The vine shifted under her hand, and she felt something enormous take notice. The air shimmered, and then, like the opening of a vast, unseen flower, a presence filled her mind. It spoke in thought, not words. Caretaker, chosen, you have spread the seeds, you have woken the roots. Will you now take the crown? Images flashed through her, every planted world, every green horizon she had made possible. But then, something darker. The same power used to choke worlds in vines, to poison the skies, to starve whole civilizations. Lurith's voice broke into her thoughts. Janelle, if you bond with this place, you'll command every garden in existence. No empire could challenge you. She swallowed. Or I could destroy them all. That too, he said grimly. The presence waited. Patient, eternal. Janelle thought of the galaxy, its petty wars, its empires, its frightened refugees. She thought of the children breathing clean air for the first time, and she thought of the mocking laughter, years ago, when people had told her to tear the space barn down. She placed her hand fully on the ancient vine. I'm not here to be a queen, she whispered. I'm here to be a gardener. The ground pulsed, and from the heart of the first garden, a shockwave of green light erupted, racing outward faster than light, touching every bonded core. Across the galaxy, deserts began to bloom, storms broke to reveal blue skies, and sterile rock turned to living soil. The empires panicked, the people rejoiced, and in the silence after the shockwave, the presence spoke one last time. Then grow, gardener, and let the galaxy grow with you. Janelle smiled, the vines curling gently around her arm, not in chains, but in welcome. And for the first time, the galaxy belonged not to conquerors, but to the keepers of life. If you'd like, I can also create a complete saga, compiled version of all 10 parts in one seamless HFY epic, so it reads like a full short novel. That would make it feel cinematic and ready for publication. Alright, here's part 11, the epilogue, where we see the aftermath of Janelle's choice and how the galaxy begins to change under her quiet, relentless influence. Part 11, 1,000 New Dawns. The first garden's pulse was still spreading. It didn't stop at the worlds she had planted, it reached and bonded seed cores buried in forgotten ruins, dormant gardens in abandoned colonies, and even ancient, sealed vaults in the hearts of empires that had long outlawed such life. Everywhere, green began to win. On a Varelian mining moon, vines cracked open slag heaps and revealed springs of fresh water. In the frozen wastes of the Targeth Syndicate's northern colonies, alien flowers pushed through the ice, feeding herds of starving grazers. And on human fringe settlements, entire forests grew overnight where yesterday there had been only dust. Governments scrambled to control the phenomenon. Some tried to claim ownership of the new lands. Some tried to destroy them, only to find that once the roots took hold, they could not be killed. The gardeners, the humans, Drenari, and others Janelle had trusted, became a network in truth now, bound not just by cores, but by purpose. They called themselves the Keepers. They answered to no empire. And Janelle? She stayed moving. No palace, no capital, just her small ship, Lurith at her side, traveling from one newborn world to another. Sometimes she was met with cheers, sometimes with suspicion, but always, she planted. Once, a young Drenari child approached her on a world barely a week old. The air was still warm from the garden's reshaping. "Are you the gardener?" the child asked. Janelle smiled. "One of them." The child tilted their head. "Will you make this world perfect?" Her smile softened. "No, that's your job. I just give it a chance." And then she left them there, to grow their own roots. In time, the galaxy stopped laughing at humans, not because of warships or armies, but because everywhere they looked, across the black void between stars, they saw green. If you want, I can now stitch all 11 parts into one single, polished, novel-like HFY story so it flows without breaks and reads like a continuous epic. That would turn this into a complete, publishable piece. Alright, here's part 12, a far future closing chapter, showing what Janelle's work becomes long after her lifetime. Part 12, Roots in the Stars. Centuries passed. The empires that had once feared Janelle's gardens rose and fell, borders shifted, fleets burned, and entire star systems changed hands a dozen times over, but the green never went away. The Keepers had grown into something vast, no longer a loose coalition, but an unshakable thread woven through the fabric of galactic civilization. They had no government, no armies, no flag, only the gardens. Every settled world had at least one, a place where vines coiled in alien shapes, flowers glowed faintly at night, and air tasted cleaner than anywhere else. The children of 100 species grew up playing among those roots, never knowing a galaxy without them. And somewhere in every garden, a caretaker carried a vine mark on their skin. They never chose their successors, the garden did. When one died, another would wake with the mark, and the roots would whisper the knowledge forward. Legends grew. Some said Janelle still walked the stars, her bond keeping her alive beyond any human span. Others swore she had become part of the first garden itself, her thoughts in every rustle of leaves and ripple of water. One thing was certain, the day the first garden had bloomed into the galaxy was now celebrated everywhere as the dawn of roots. No empire claimed it, no faith owned it, it belonged to all. On one such dawn, a young keeper named Elian knelt beside a newly sprouted core on a distant frontier world. The mark on his wrist pulsed warmly. In the whispering of the vines, he thought he heard a voice, soft, human, and familiar. Take care of it, that's all it ever needed. He smiled, placed his hands into the soil, and began to plant. Far above, the stars gleamed over a galaxy no longer bound by just metal and war, but by roots, rain, and the stubborn human who had believed life could be the strongest power in the universe. If you want, I can now merge all 12 parts into one complete, seamless HFY epic so it reads like a continuous novel without breaks. That would turn this into a fully polished story ready for sharing or publishing.